Her expertise lies within health communication and public health, especially as it applies to using key data and optimizing community networks to make a change in the lives of those she serves. With a bachelor's degree in public relations and strategic communications from the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire, Katie subsequently earned a master's degree in health communication from Purdue University. Katie, thank you for being here, and we are eager to hear your presentation.
Thank you, Kathy. I am going to share my slides right now. And I hope you are able to see my slides and hear me okay. If you're not, please unmute and share with me that you can't see my slides. But thank you so much, Colleen. Thank you so much, Kathy. Thank you so much, everyone, for allowing me some time to talk a little bit about our military-connected families across the country, but then specifically, as Kathy and Colleen mentioned, a data deep dive into the state of Wisconsin. The most recent report that was released last September focused on the financial well-being of military and veteran families for the country. In today's presentation, that report will guide our conversation, but it will be, again, a data deep dive for the state of Wisconsin, specifically looking at veteran families and issues related to financial well-being. Our most recent report looked like, and does look like, a screenshot here, and you can access this report if you're unfamiliar by going to our QR code on the left side of the screen or using that short link to look at this report on a web browser. Again, at the Military Family Research Institute, we have what's called our Measuring Communities initiative, and that is two-part. The first part is our Measuring Communities online data portal, which is something that we talked about just briefly. I think Colleen mentioned it towards the beginning of this presentation. We talked a little bit about it, but then I will also talk about it towards the end. So you know that you have access to this free online data portal that you can log in and get lots of data that I talk about throughout today's presentation in that portal. The second part of our Measuring Communities initiative is what has been referred to as our Measuring Communities reports. Our reports are released every year, and they aim to be the state of the state for military-connected families across the country. Our most recent report, like I mentioned a few times now, is our Measuring Communities Spotlight report, and that report is labeled and called The Financial Well-Being of Military and Veteran Families in the United States, and it focuses on 5 specific topics, which again will kind of guide our conversation through our Wisconsin Data Deep Dive presentation today. Those topics include demographics. They include community context variables that we should consider when we serve and support military-connected families. And then it'll also include the topics of financial indicators, employment concerns or opportunities, and also housing issues. So to start, I'm going to guide us through starting at demographics and working our way through topics, both looking at national patterns, national trends, and then also diving into the state of Wisconsin. So for our national veteran population, looking at roughly the last 5 years in time, being between 2017, 2022, even 2023, as data begins to populate for the state. We know, and we probably know, many of us across different scopes of work recognize and understand that our veteran population now includes more women, more veterans who identify as part of racial and ethnic minority groups, and veterans with more service-connected disabilities. And what I mean by that last statement is that this table here, it was brought from our Veterans Benefit Administration annual report, looks at the average number of service-connected disabilities per veteran across era of service. And so you can look at disabilities number of disabilities per veteran during different eras in which they served. What you're seeing is that this number is much higher than previous eras, implying that veterans who served during the Gulf War era likely have more service-connected disabilities than previous eras. And of course, that's of concern or maybe priority as we serve veterans across the state of Wisconsin, specifically across the nation as well, because we know that these veterans are likely experiencing more health challenges than previous generations, which likely require more medical, more mental health, more financial, more employment support. Then specifically for the state of Wisconsin, I'm looking at your veteran population. First, what I want to call out is this heat map towards the side. As you go into our Measuring Communities online data portal, you actually get the map of the country, including Alaska, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, and a variety of other territories as well. You're looking at a heat map, which looks at the total veteran population broken out by every county across the country. I just happened to zoom into the state of Wisconsin for this specific PowerPoint presentation and today's presentation in its entirety. What you're seeing is that the darker red pockets across the state of Wisconsin is where more veterans are living. Your lighter yellow colors are going to imply where fewer veterans are living. When we talk about our veteran population here, I think it's important to also call out, before I get into some of this data, where this data is coming from and the year in which I'm presenting on. And so the data that you're looking at right here for the veteran population comes from the US Census Bureau in the year 2023. Actually, just last month, the US Census Bureau released the most recent data for 2023 for our veteran population. And as I say our veteran population, what I mean by that is the definition that comes from the census, because this is where our data source is. And so that definition is, and I'm going to read it verbatim, men and women who have served even for a short time, but are not currently serving on active duty. People who served in the National Guard or reserves are considered veterans if they were ever called or ordered to active duty, not counting the 4 to 6 months for initial training or yearly summer camps. And I think it's important because these numbers potentially might be different than the numbers that you're familiar with for the state of Wisconsin. At the Military Family Research Institute, we typically use two data sources when we talk about the veteran population. We either use our Census Bureau data, which is what you're looking at right now, or the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. Many of you might be familiar with the VA veteran data. That VA veteran data, they use something called your Vet Pop model, which is slightly different than the Census Bureau, which would make sense that these numbers might be slightly different. So I wanted to make sure that we recognize that as I talk on this slide. This data is 2023 as well, and it's just released actually last month. So these numbers might be different, but I want us, again, to know the source and the date of that data. Nonetheless, so across the state of Wisconsin, you've got about 297,000 veterans living in Wisconsin. This veteran population is declining since 2017. This is consistent with national veteran populations as well. There's about 10% of your Wisconsin veteran population who identify as part of a racial and ethnic minority group. This percentage is increasing since 2017, so diversifying in terms of race and ethnicity. You have about 23,800 women veterans who live in Wisconsin, which is about 8% of your total veteran population living in Wisconsin. And interestingly, this population has declined slightly since 2017, even though on the previous slide, for national patterns, you're looking at the women veteran population growing across the country. There are about 38,000 veteran households, so not veterans, veteran households with children in Wisconsin. This has declined since 2017 as well. And then you can look at your veteran population in Wisconsin by a variety of different subgroups as well. One of the things that we can pull out is era of service. And so the map on this side, what you're seeing here is a heat map again for your Gulf War era veteran who served post 9/11. The darker red implies that there's a higher percentage of the veteran population in that specific county who are a part of that specific era. When you look at VA data and what you would have seen on previous slides, is Gulf War era implies both 1990 through current when we're talking about VA benefit data, but for this slide here, the census actually breaks out your Gulf War era by 1990 to 2001, so pre 9/11, and then Gulf War era 2001 or later as post 9/11. Two different ways of looking at the Gulf War era veteran. In the state of Wisconsin, about 54,000 veterans served during the Gulf War era pre 9/11, and about 58,000 veterans served during the Gulf War era post 9/11. And of course, veterans can serve in overlapping eras as well. Both of these veteran populations are increasing since 2017. One of the things that I wanted to call out specifically as we look at our veteran population in the state of Wisconsin as it applies to era of service is the veteran era in terms of Vietnam era. You have a large number of veterans in the state of Wisconsin, about 109,000 veterans who served during the Vietnam era. In Wisconsin, this population is declining. But there is a large portion of veterans who served during this era, and we know that veterans who served during the Vietnam era may have unique experiences, a part of their veteran experience in the military, and also benefits now as a veteran that may be unique to this era of service. We also can look at, too, in measuring communities, the percent of the veteran population across the country who has a service-connected disability. For the state of Wisconsin specifically, about 1/4, 25% of Wisconsin veterans have a service-connected disability. This is important as you start to think about contextually how you may serve veterans a part of your Wisconsin population, because a service-connected disability includes a 0% disability rating to 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70% or over, or a disability rating that's not determined or identified. And so one of the things that I would say here is an implication or inference from this specific data point is that you can look at this potentially as 25% of your Wisconsin veteran population are connected to VA care in some way. And this is increasing over time since 2017. A large portion of your veteran population in Wisconsin are older veterans, 65 years and older, and this is increasing slightly since 2017 as well. One of the things I also wanted to call out for this specific data deep dive, which we didn't necessarily touch on in our most recent report, but do have data on, is our veterans living on tribal land. So for the state of Wisconsin, we looked at tribal land. Again, this comes from the Census Bureau and census tracts. So these tribal land areas, they do span slightly into the state of Minnesota, which you would see in the legend here for some of these different colored areas across the state of Wisconsin. You have, though, about 2,400 veterans who are living on tribal land in Wisconsin and some into Minnesota as well. This is also a declining veteran population since about 2017. Of the veterans living on tribal land in 2023, about 89% are male, about 11% are female. That percentage is actually higher for female veterans than compared to your percentage of the veteran population in the state of Wisconsin who identify as female 51% are age 65 years and older. That's pretty consistent with your total Wisconsin veteran population. And then a high percentage also served during the Vietnam era, and fewer served during other eras. About 10% are living in poverty. And what I mean by that is 10% have an income below the federal poverty line, which I'll get to in some coming slides. About 81% of this population have no service-connected disability, which would again be kind of higher than your Wisconsin total veteran population, which is around 75%. So fewer veterans living on tribal land potentially are connected to VA care. And then 62% have at least some college experience, and how you would define some college experience is some college experience or an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, or a higher degree. We also, in our most recent Measuring Community Spotlight report, looked at rural communities. And the data that we use here is from the USDA Rural Urban Continuum 2023. This data, though it says 2023, was actually released last year, and it is released every 10 years, dependent on your decennial census. So that's your census ending in 0. The most recent decennial census would be 2020, based on population numbers from the decennial census. Your rural urban continuum codes are identified. And so this is the most recent data that we have available. Across the country, approximately 3.1 million service members and veterans live in more non-metro communities. How that is defined is a score of, on the rural urban continuum, 4 to 9. So you can see the populations and categories defined there in the legend on this slide. We would consider that a more rural community where we know where access to resources, to support, to social needs may be more difficult to achieve and access for our veteran and service-connected or military-connected community. In Wisconsin specifically, you have about 98,000 veterans who live in these more non-metro communities or more rural communities, which is about 1/3 of your veteran population. We also look at something in our most recent report and on the online data portal called the Digital Divide Index. And so your Digital Divide Index is a scoring system and a variable that has been released and created by the Purdue Center for Regional Development. Our most recent data in 2022, getting ready to have our 2023 data available as well. Your digital divide looks at issues related to access and adoption of digital means within the community. And it looks at the digital divide through a public health perspective or lens. So there's a digital divide score. That score is 0 to 100, 30 to 100 being a high digital divide. So that would be on this map here, your dark blue counties, your lighter green are going to be counties which have a lower digital divide, so they don't have as many issues related to adopting technology or accessing technology. But that digital divide score is an umbrella score. Again, 30 to 100 is going to imply a high digital divide. It also includes 2 different subscores, and that's going to be your broadband infrastructure subscore and then also your socioeconomic subscore. Again, because the digital divide looks at the divide through a public health perspective. Your broadband infrastructure score is going to look at things like access to high-speed internet, access to internet at all, average upload speeds, download speeds. And your socioeconomic score is going to look at things that may influence your ability to adopt, to afford, to access digital means. And so that looks at things like age, educational attainment when it comes to digital literacy. It looks at affordability by looking at income and poverty, for example. Do you have the means to afford digital means, for example? In 2022, the average digital divide index score, so averaging all scores across all counties in Wisconsin, was 19.5. And this is improving and has improved since 2020. And I know there's been large pushes across the state of Wisconsin specific to the digital divide that may be helping and improving digital access and adoption across your state. Consistent across these years, too, the digital divide has been largely influenced by broadband infrastructure. And what I mean by that is if you were to look at Adams County, Wisconsin here, if your digital divide score is above 30, you can look to those subscores to see, okay, why is this score so high or high in general? And if the score for broadband infrastructure is higher than your score for socioeconomic variables, like in Adams County, then you can imply and infer that the score is likely high because of broadband infrastructure. And that's a consistent type of takeaway for the state of Wisconsin. So if you improve broadband infrastructure across the state of Wisconsin, you likely lower or improve your digital divide score. And then again, your Wisconsin County with the largest digital divide is Adams County. We also look at financial indicators, of course, that impact our health and well-being. One of the things that we looked at in the report is food insecurity. And as I talk about food insecurity, I want to make a distinction between food insecurity and use of SNAP benefits. So our food insecurity definitions come from the USDA. Food insecurity is defined as a household's limited or uncertain access to enough safe and nutritious food across the country and across many different research reports, specifically from RAND Corporation. Veterans tend to be at high risk for food insecurity, yet food insecure veterans are consistently less likely than non-veterans to use SNAP benefits. And this is something that I want to be clear on. When we talk about food insecurity, unfortunately, we're limited to the data that we can talk about. And in the census, what they share with us is use of SNAP benefits. And so this is just one way that we can think about and conceptualize food insecurity in the veteran population is looking at the number of veteran households who are using SNAP benefits. Of course, veterans can experience food insecurity without using SNAP benefits. They may not be eligible for SNAP benefits. They may not apply for SNAP benefits. They may not use them just in entirety or whatever the case is. But this is one way that we can start to gauge food insecurity locally across the country as it applies to veteran households. One of the things that we've done also is we've separated out to our best ability in terms of analysis female veteran-led households using SNAP benefits and male veteran-led households using SNAP benefits. And these are the maps that you're going to see on the slide here. They use the same legend. So you're seeing, a thematic color scheme where there's less variability here and more variability here in terms of color. And what that implies is actually a national pattern, is that female veteran-led households typically use SNAP benefits more frequently than their male veteran-led households. But we also know that veteran men, in terms of the population of the total veteran population, accompany a large portion of the veteran population. And so what you're seeing as you dive into the state of Wisconsin is that about 2,500 or 10% of the female veteran-led households are using SNAP, did use SNAP in 2022, and about 14,700 or 5% of the male veteran-led households use SNAP in 2022. So you can see that when we look at percentages, there's a larger percentage of the female veteran-led household using SNAP in 2022, double that of the male veteran-led households. But we also know, again, when we talk about the veteran population nationally, but also to the state of Wisconsin, there is a large number as we look at our raw total, our raw number here, 14,700 male veteran-led households using SNAP benefits in 2022. So it's some things to consider here. We also look at and report our veteran median income. And with Measuring Communities and at the Military Family Research Institute, we look at veteran median income in two ways. We both look at it at the veteran person level income. So that looks at your average or median veteran and their income compared to a non-veteran, average, median, non-veteran and their income, and compares person level income. When we start to think about the contextual way in which we apply things like that in terms of person level comparisons, one of the things we found most helpful is looking at the household income. It helps us kind of conceptualize and contextualize what's happening in the household. And so we've started to report the veteran median household income versus and compared to your non-veteran median household income. Nationally, across the country, what we're seeing is that typically your veteran median household income is higher than your non-veteran median household income. Of course, there's pockets across the country where this isn't necessarily the case, but that's our average finding across the nation. Wisconsin is the same. So you've got your veteran median household income in the state of Wisconsin, 67,500. This is increasing since 2017, which is also, again, higher than your non-veteran median household income of 65,900, both of which are kind of increasing at the same rate since 2017. We also report veterans living in poverty, and what I mean by that, and as I would define this specific definition, is veteran households or veterans with an income below the federal poverty line. The federal poverty line, of course, comes to us and is reported in the census and a variety of different U.S. departments. The federal poverty line is determined, again, and reported in the census and varies by family size. It's pre-tax income, it's adjusted by family size, number of children, and householder age. But to give you some numbers of what you might be looking at, for an individual, that's about 15,000. For a family of two, that's about 20,000. For a family of three, that's about 25,000. For a family of four, that's about 30,000. Of course, it's adjusted by, again, family size, number of children, householder age, etc. What we've done in Measuring Communities and what we report at the Military Family Research Institute are the percentage of veterans in two different age buckets. We look at age 18 to 64, and then we look at age 65 and older. We define age 18 to 64 as kind of your working age, and then 65 and older as your retirement or maybe non-traditional working age. What we see is that it's roughly 6% of the veteran population in the state of Wisconsin are with an income below the poverty line. But there's different variations to this. So it's about 6.5% of the veteran population age 18 to 64 are living in poverty in Wisconsin. And this is decreasing since 2017, which is a good sign. There's fewer veterans age 18 to 64 living in poverty than there were in 2017. And for the age 65 and older category, we actually see something different. There's about 5.8% of the veterans age 65 and older who are living in poverty in Wisconsin, but this is actually increasing since 2017. So roughly the same percentage, but trending different ways. We also look at, in our Measuring Communities report, housing cost burden. And what I mean by that is housing cost burden would be defined as spending about 30% of your household income on housing related costs. So that could be rental, that could be mortgage, that could be utility bills related to your house or your housing situation. We've also reported on severe housing cost burden, and that's spending more than 50% of your household income on housing related costs. This is a community related variable, so it's not specific to the military connected population. We are not reporting specifically the percent of veterans, for example, across the country who are experiencing severe housing cost burden, but we know that our military connected population makes up a lot of different communities across the country. And so we've looked at severe housing cost burden. What you're seeing on this map here is the percent of the households in the community who are spending more than 50% or more of their household income on housing related costs. And so what you're seeing typically in my mind, what I would jump to is the state of California as having a large percentage of their community and households experiencing severe housing cost burden. But there's, as you look to Wisconsin, you're also seeing kind of those pockets of blue, which would imply a higher percentage of your community experiencing severe housing cost burden. You're seeing it around Dane County, and then you're also seeing it around Milwaukee County as well. As I look to your county level data here, Milwaukee County, Wisconsin is the county with the largest percentage of households experiencing severe housing cost burden, which is about 16.9% of the households in Milwaukee County experiencing severe housing cost burden. And then the other thing that we touch on in our housing section specifically for the Measuring Community Spotlight report is veterans experiencing homelessness. We get our data here from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, in the point in time count. And so our point in time count, as many of you are familiar, typically happens in January. A tally between 1 to 2 weeks or roughly happens towards the end of January. And HUD defines homeless or veterans experiencing homelessness as if a person lacked a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. So that includes folks living in emergency shelters, in transitional housing, or places not meant for humans to live, like a car or a park. In the state of Wisconsin, about 335 veterans were experiencing homelessness in a point in time in 2023. And as you look across time with this point in time count, it's remaining fairly consistent. So you're roughly mid 300s veterans who are experiencing homelessness in the state of Wisconsin. And then we look at employment in our most recent Measuring Communities Spotlight report. When we talk about employment as it applies to the military connected community, typically what we hone into and highlight is military spouse unemployment. For this presentation today, I'm focusing more on your veteran population, but I do want to just kind of bring awareness, if awareness is already not there, about our military spouse employment issues. This rate has remained consistently around 20, above 20% for our military spouses as you look at your active duty military spouses, and around 7-8% for your reserve component spouses as well. These percentages are much higher than our total population across the country, and something that has been a consistent concern for our military connected communities, especially our currently serving military connected community. But for today, one of the things that I wanted to pull out and kind of dig a bit deeper into for the state of Wisconsin is that we found in our most recent report that women veterans with service-connected disabilities, and again, that's your disability rating that you're seeing on the slide here. 0% is a disability rating, upwards of 70% and more, up to 100%. Experienced rising unemployment rates between 2022 to 2023. And so we only have, as we look into the census, specifically for the state of Wisconsin, it'll be released in the next few weeks, actually, from PUMS. Your 2022 women veteran with service-connected disability unemployment rates, but we can look over time between 2017 to 2022. So this is the number of women veterans in the state of Wisconsin in 2022 with a disability rating of 0%, 10 to 20, 30 to 40, 50 to 60, and 70 or more, and the no rating here. And what you're seeing actually may be in opposition with our national pattern, and that is many of the women veterans with different disability ratings, the unemployment rate is actually improving. The only concern then would be for women veterans with a service-connected disability between 10 to 20%, and this is actually in red because it's rising. Everything else, or in terms of these categories or different unemployment rates for women veterans, are actually improving or have no issue, even with your comparison to your no rating as well. So something to keep in mind. Of course, it's varied here, maybe in opposition, but specifically rising for women veterans who have a disability rate for 10 to 20% in terms of unemployment. And then I like to spend some time talking about some data implications and takeaways here. So I've talked about a variety of different data as it applies to your Wisconsin veteran population. I want you, of course, you serve veterans across the state of Wisconsin or military connected families across the state of Wisconsin in varied ways. One of my hopes always as I give data deep dive presentations is that the data just doesn't stay in PowerPoint mode, but we think about ways in which we can use this data in our scope of work to better serve, to best serve our military connected population across the country, and specifically for you all in the state of Wisconsin. So I've highlighted here about 9-ish implications and takeaways, this slide and the next slide that I'll go through right now. As we think about some of the things, synthesize some of the data that I talked about today, consistent with national patterns, the Wisconsin veteran population is diversifying in terms of race and ethnicity. Again, this is a consistent finding across the country, very consistent across many states across the country, and also specific to the state of Wisconsin. Your veteran population is diversifying. Continue to incorporate the unique perspectives and experiences of veterans. Across the nation, the women veteran population is growing, yet in Wisconsin, this population has declined slightly since 2017. So I might encourage investigation in terms of investigating reasons for a declining women veteran population, and then continue to incorporate their voices, perspectives, and experiences into veteran-specific initiatives. The Wisconsin veteran population is largely made up of those who served during the Vietnam era, recognize unique experiences and possible health challenges or even benefits that are specific to this era of veterans. And this includes also veterans living on tribal land, because a big portion of veterans living on tribal land also served during the Vietnam era. While the percent of veterans with a service-connected disability is rising across Wisconsin, continue to explore outreach opportunities for veterans to become VA connected. At this point, again, this is just an inference, you have about 25% of your total veteran population in the state of Wisconsin with a service-connected disability, which would imply that they're VA connected. So there's a large portion of your veteran population who may still be able to be reached and connect with the VA. This serves as a protective factor. Many of you are aware, as you think about suicide prevention for the veteran population, being able to be VA connected is a protective factor against suicide. This includes, when appropriate, of course, connecting with the veterans living on tribal land, especially. 1/3 of the Wisconsin veteran population lives in a non-metro or rural community. So consider, again, promoting opportunities for social and resource support for these veterans, and ensure that your outreach efforts in connecting with these veterans incorporate potential barriers to digital access. Again, that may be broadband infrastructure. They may not have access to the internet. So consider those different types of barriers when informing your outreach efforts, for example. Consistent with national patterns, the percentage of women veteran-led households who use SNAP benefits is higher, in this case, double the percent of veteran men-led households who use SNAP benefits. We know also, consistent across the country, the total number of male veteran-led households using SNAP is still higher. It's high at 14,700 households, male veteran-led households using SNAP. So consider women, of course, in food insecurity related initiatives work also to reduce any stigmas associated with accessing food related resources for the veteran population and specifically men. While the percent of veterans age 18 to 64 living in poverty is decreasing in Wisconsin, the percent of veterans age 65 and older living in poverty is actually trending upward. So it is a cause for some consideration and investigation, of course. Specialize your financial based efforts to really target this specific veteran age group, your older veterans who may be in need of some financial support. Explore housing related efforts in higher housing cost burdened communities. The communities that I'm thinking of are Milwaukee County or Dane County. Consider supporting efforts to alleviate housing affordability concerns for veterans and their families. Look into things like VA home loans. And again, support veterans living in those more housing cost burdened communities. Overall, the unemployment rate for women veterans with disabilities is improving overall, which is possibly in opposition from national patterns, but consider continuing specifically supporting this group of women in Wisconsin and across the country to encourage employment opportunities and success, continue that trend going upward. The other thing that I wanted to touch on, of course, is that throughout today's presentation, I touched on a variety of different data indicators and data topics and different data points throughout today's presentation that you also have access to for free. And so, like I said at the beginning of this conversation, measuring communities is multifaceted. It has two parts. There's both your measuring community spotlight report, which we touched on today specifically for the state of Wisconsin, but then there's also your measuring communities online data portal. This is a free resource for you to use. You do need to log in using a member ID. Your member ID is free. It's on the screen here, VCAN 2023. It's the same member ID as I gave to you all in the last time that I presented, as Kathy said, November 2023 is when I first presented to you all. It's the same member ID, but you can go into measuring communities and say you work in Wisconsin, but you also serve Minnesota or Illinois or Michigan, for example, some neighboring states, or you've got a national perspective. You can go into measuring communities and you can look at some of this data for different regions of the country. We have data in measuring communities across the country at different varying geographic levels. We have state level data. We've got congressional district level data. We also have county level data specific to data indicators. And we have 5 more data topics that I didn't touch on in this report, looking at mental health and medical care and K through 12 education and post-secondary education and legal. So all of that can be found in measuring communities. Please take a snapshot if you want to of this slide here. I can make sure that you all are given the slide to use to access measuring communities. There's also a tutorial if you ever get stumped while going into the online data portal. I've got a tutorial on YouTube so you can figure out logistically how to navigate the portal. But your steps, you go to www.measuringcommunities.org. you click on a pop-up window, the first button will say Explore Web-Based Data. You click that button, it's going to ask you for a member ID. Your member ID is going to be VCAN 2023. You're going to enter your name. Work email address works great. If you don't have a work email address, you can have your email address and click submit, and then you will land on our landing page, which is going to look like this. Our most recent reports are located here. Getting to some of the data, again, is through our topics domain, and that's where you select your topic of interest. And then again, I wanted to make sure that you know today's presentation focused primarily on the financial well-being of veteran families in the state of Wisconsin. It included topics of demographics, community, housing, financial, and employment, but we also have data for, like I said, behavioral health. So you do have your suicide rate data. You've got VA behavioral health facility data. You've got behavioral health professional shortage area data. We also have medical care. This is where you can look into veteran disability ratings. So some of the data that I shared today fell into disability ratings, whether someone has a disability rating or not, and the different varied levels of disability ratings. And then we also have education. We have post-secondary education. One of our biggest ones is veteran educational attainment, different levels of education. And then we also have K through 12 education, which focuses primarily on military connected kids and education and support systems for them. We also have legal, and this is really helpful when you think about veteran treatment courts across the country and different supports there. I wanted to make sure that I ended on a slide here. We do have time, of course, for questions. If you have any questions throughout today's presentation, please put them in the chat. But I did want to mention and share my email address with you all. Again, my name is Katie Walter. I'm a Senior Community Outreach Specialist at the Military Family Research Institute. My email is here. Please follow up with me if you have any questions. But like I said throughout this presentation, I'm happy to answer any questions with you. I can share this data with you. Please remember that you've got that data portal so you can navigate and find the data that makes most sense for you as you consider your scope of work in serving military connected families. But thank you so much. I think Colleen, Kathy, Shannon, I think we've got time for some questions. So if there are any questions that you have for me, now is your chance.
Yeah, so I was going to say, Katie, we did start getting questions during the presentation, so we'll start with those, obviously. So do you guys have the information on veterans who use VA medical services, Indian Health Services, TRICARE for Life, or private insurance for healthcare?
We do have the percent of the community who, we actually have two different data sets that I would mention here. So we have VA expenditure data. So we've got, the number of individual VA patients per state across the country. So we've got that data. The other data that we have is insurance coverage related, which is what this question seems to kind of hint at. But it's the percent of the community. And by community, I mean everyone living in a certain county across the country who has health insurance. And then we've got different varied levels of health insurance. And so what I mean by that is we've got the percent of the community with VA health insurance and the percent of the community with TRICARE, and a variety of different ones based also on age as well.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you on that. When you were discussing food insecurity, what percentage of female vet households have kids present, and what percent of males?
This is a good question. Yeah, this is a good question. We don't yet explore that data. I actually was in conversation earlier this week with someone in Indiana talking about veteran households and a variety of different veteran household makeups. And so at this point, we report veteran households using SNAP benefits at both male veteran-led households and female veteran-led households, but we don't look at households with children or without children yet. That's something, though, if there's increased interest in learning that data, we can take that back to our internal teams, and I am confident that our data scientists would be able to find that from the census.
Excellent, thank you.
Of course.
Our next question, does the housing cost information include those who are living in assisted living or skilled nursing facilities? Do you have data related to this?
I'm going to have to check with the housing cost. So there are two different data sources. For your housing cost burden, this is a different source. We get it from our county health rankings. And then the other part of the question had to do with veterans living in facilities. And so I will have to check on the housing cost burden if that includes veterans living in facilities. The other part of this question, though, is that we have what is referred to in the Census Bureau as your institutionalized veteran population. Your institutionalized veteran population includes the number of veterans at the state level, is what we reported at, who live in nursing facilities. And so we do have the total veteran population living in nursing facilities for the state of Wisconsin, but I'm unsure if that overlaps with housing cost burden.
Okay, thank you. And then can the database break down the homeless veteran population and other info by individual county and or branch of service?
Gosh, good question. We've had this question before as well. So our veterans experiencing homelessness data comes from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and it's through their point in time count. So we're a bit limited based on the data that they're able to share with us, or just share broadly. And so typically what we report our homeless data at is either state level or COC data. I know there's been different advisory groups in the state of Indiana specifically. Of course, I'm located in West Lafayette, Indiana, so I'm a little familiar with local data. That sometimes it's able to be reported on county level data, but in terms of the reports that they share broadly, it's at state and COC. And so for the state of Indiana, and I'm not familiar with the state of Wisconsin specifically, but for the state of Indiana, that would look like reporting veterans who are experiencing homelessness at the Indiana level. And then Indiana has two COCs, basically, Indianapolis and everything else. And so those would be the only levels. In terms of military branch, I don't believe they report military branch when they look at veteran homelessness, but they do report two different subgroups of the veteran population, and that is veterans experiencing homelessness by gender. So that's women, men, and other genders. And then it's we do have by race and ethnicity for veterans experiencing homelessness. So those are the two subgroups of the veteran population that I know off the top of my head, but I don't believe military branch is a part of that. And I don't believe that we certainly don't report it beyond the state. And for the state of Wisconsin, your number is 335 veterans experiencing homelessness. So I would caution potentially looking at county level, just in the sense that some things may be identifiable.
Thank you. Do we have any data on how many World War II era veterans that are still with us?
Yes, we do. We do report veterans who served during World War II. Gosh, and I'm going to write this down. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but this is something that I'm going to find out. We can look at the number in terms of, and this I see in the chat, there's some comments about the data for the veteran population, I guess I would highlight too, when I talk about this data that we have for World War II era veterans, I'm talking primarily from the Census Bureau data. And so we do have it from the census. And then we also have, as folks are mentioning in the chat, from your VA, U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. And so, yes, there's different sources here. And yes, we do. And yes, I will follow up.
Excellent.
With the number, yeah. And I can look at populations across time as well, if that's of interest to that person too.
Great. And then regarding veteran population, do you have any by county veteran density data?
Yeah, yes. So we report veteran population at the county level. Typically, when you're looking in the demographics, section of our Measuring Communities online data portal, that is going to come from the Census Bureau. And we can report the number of veterans who are living in each county. And you can look at and have reported previously the number of veterans out of the total adult population 18 and older, and the percent of the veteran population, or the percent of the adult population who identify as veterans, and that would be defined as veteran density. So yes, we do report that and can report that truly at other varied subgroup veteran populations as well.
Excellent, thank you. So we have no additional new questions. So I'm actually going to stop recording now, but if you guys do have any more questions, please put them in the chat, and we'll stay on for a little bit longer. I'm going to turn this over to Colleen Flaherty.
Thank you, Shannon. And thank you so much, Katie. This was great. It was so amazing to see so many of you. As I mentioned, I will email out to both everybody who was on the call and everybody who signed up and our general email list a copy of this recording. Katie is kind enough. She said she will send us the presentation as well as the MFRI database she was working off of, which was also mentioned in the presentation. And I will send her the list of questions in case she wants to add any more context, and that will go out with the follow-up as well. I also put her email in the chat, and just so if anyone else wants to follow up with her directly. Let's see. Oh, yes, Shelley, there will be a follow-up. Sorry, I was just looking at the chat. If there are no other questions, thank you so much for attending.
Thank you all so much.
A wonderful day.